I'm John Seaman. I'm with Kerry Kautzer, and we're covering the 2018 Elkhart Lake Vintage Festival, presented by the Vintage Sports Car Drivers Association at Road America Racetrack in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. The ELVF is celebrating 33 years of racing at Road America. The featured mark this year is the Spridget, the Austin Healey Sprite, or MG Midget. They're two-seater sports cars made in England from 1958 to 1974. This is the 60th anniversary of the Austin Healey Bug-Eye Sprite. The honored guest this weekend will be Peter Egan, former writer for Road and Track magazine, who got his start racing a Bug-Eye Sprite. There will be a special historic Sprites and Midget display in the Race Spridget car show on Friday evening. Sunday we'll have a Spridget parade lap and a Spridget feature race. Saturday there will be qualifying races for all race groups in the morning and sprint races for all groups in the afternoon. There are 10 different race groups, including pre-war, vintage production, monoposto, historic production, modern production, Formula V. Saturday evening will be the annual Gather on the Green Invitational Concours car show at the Osthoff Resort in downtown Elkhart Lake. Sunday will be the final group races and the Kimberly Cup, Sheldon Cup, and Elkhart Lake Cup races, which are mixed car races based on similar lap times. And again, the featured race on Sunday at 1 p.m. will be for Sprites and Midgets. I'm with Stan Mason, and he's from Edwardsburg, Michigan. And Stan is one of the organizers to get all these Spridgets together for this weekend. Give us a little overview of what's happening.
I'll go back to the 50th reunion, which was held actually at Mid-Ohio at SVRA. They had 25 Sprites and Midgets racing there, primarily Sprites. And so when we were there, we thought, wow, this is really a big deal. So what I was really trying to do was something even bigger and better than that. And with VSCDA's support, we've been able to do that. We have 46 Sprites racing, and I'm expecting that we should have up to probably 100 street Sprites too. So we're really celebrating the 60th reunion, which takes us back to 1958. And so Sprites were brought into the market as a lower price sports car. And very quickly on, they became really important cars for racing. There's lots of family heritage of dads going all the way back to the 60s, and sons, were there helping them change tires or whatever. They're now racing, vintage racing, and dad's either watching or he's racing too. We're just really happy to be here, and we're happy to Road America is such a great venue. We have people from all over the United States. We have Canada, all the way from the west coast of California and Oregon. We have people from Florida. We have people from Texas. So from all over, both for street cars and for race cars.
I'm with Jeff and Don Kelly. This is a Bug-Eye Sprite behind us, and it's interesting enough that Jeff here raced the car back in what time? When years did you race the car, Jeff?
I started racing them in 70, 71. I had the other car that got wrecked and bought this blue car. It's now blue. In 76, and I raced then until about 84.
You've been watching your dad, I assume, all this time?
Oh, yeah. I learned how to work on this car when I was 8 years old. And it sat for 26 years, and then I decided I wanted to go racing, and we put it together. And Dad was real instrumental on getting it put together so we could go racing.
This race car, what does it have for an engine in it?
It has a 948 cc A-Series Austin engine. When I raced it, it was not much more than stock. Overboard. We had the 1.25 carbs that were not stock on it then. Now, since he started racing it 7 years ago, it's gotten modified quite a bit.
What did you want to do first?
I needed to get the safety equipment all straightened out so that we could have up-to-date safety equipment. I had to decide on a paint scheme for the car, and that took a lot of thought, but I decided on a paint scheme that would highlight my career or my time in the United States Marine Corps. So the car is an homage to my Marine Corps time. It's dress blues colors. The next thing I wanted to do was get with VSCDA and get my license, go to driver's school, and start racing.
Did you get out in the practice this morning, and how's everything going?
I did go out to practice this morning, and it felt really strange at first. I think I just had to knock some rust off of me. The track's much bigger than I usually race on. We usually race at places like Waterford, Michigan, Grattan, Gingerman, Black Hawk, and they're 1.5 to 2 mile courses. This being a 4 mile or better course, there's a lot of time for a little car like this for you to get out there and start feeling and start hearing and thinking and, you know, what's that rattle and is the steering wheel supposed to feel like this? And but by the time the end of the session came, I was pretty confident that the car's running well and I'm ready to go for the rest of the weekend.
When I was 20 years old, I worked at a gas station and I was going to college. I had a street Bug-Eye, but I always wanted to eventually race it. And a friend of mine that I worked at the gas station with for $20 a week, he said, hey, there's some racing parts for a Sprite. Well, I went to look at the racing parts, realized they were more expensive than whatever the $20 I was going to make per week. And so he had a racing Sprite there too. I ended up buying it. I've owned it for since 1968, I guess it is. And it was also the first race I ever went to in SCCA was in 1965, and I saw this car race there. I didn't know it when I was buying it. And then I found out later it actually won the race. I'm really proud to still be racing it today. So this is an original Central Division SCCA car.
a sponge cake and watching the sun bathe. All the tourists are covered with oil, and I'm strumming my sixth string, whoa, on my front porch swing, smelling the shrimp, they're beginning to boil. Everybody sing along now, here we go. Wasting away again in Margaritaville, searching for my old shaker of salt. And some people claim that there's a woman to blame, but I know, yes, well, it's nobody's fault. I blew up my flip-flops and stepped on a pop-top. Caught my heel, had to cruise on back home. And there's booze in the blender, oh, soon it will render. That frozen concoction that helps me hang on. Wasting away your gun in Margaritaville, searching for my old shaker of salt.
Obviously, this is all about Camp Anakiji and raising some money for the camp. For kids that cannot afford to go to camp, it's a wonderful facility.
I'm with Chip Starr, and he has a 1960 Austin Healey Sprite Bug-Eye race car. Chip, give us some information on this car.
Well, this race car has been a race car since brand new off the showroom floor, raced by Dan Hall, kind of a famous racer in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. And he sold it to a friend in 65. Well, actually 64, the car was wrecked, rebuilt by Dan and his friend Larry Randall, and then Larry Randall ran the car consistently from 66 till 1989. And a lot of race history. It's a 948cc original block, 40 over, legal H production. It's about 12 to 1 compression. Run 2 1 1/4 SUs. It's got a close ratio square cut or straight cut gearbox. And a 455 welded differential. Other than that, it's got a set of original magnesium mini lights that have been on the car since the late 60s.
That's great. Where did you find the car?
I bought the car from Larry Randall's widow, unfortunately. So it was still always been a local Portland car. Yeah.
So this is your first trip to Road America?
This is our first trip out here. It was a long haul, but we're happy to be here.
Now again, where are you from?
Portland, Oregon. Fun track. I love it. It's a fun track. A little bit of tuning to do to the car, but we'll get there this afternoon.
I'm with Peter Egan, and we're here on Sunday at the Elkhart Lake Vintage Festival. And Peter is the honored guest for the ELVF. You've been a writer for Road and Track magazine for many years. Could you give us a little bit on Road America and on your time with Road and Track magazine?
Well, Road America is really my home track. When I was about 13 years old, a poster appeared in our drugstore window in Elroy, Wisconsin, and it said June Sprints, Elkhart Lake, and it had a picture of a couple of cars coming around a corner. And so I had already started reading Road and Track. I had just gotten my first Road and Track magazine from that drugstore, and I saw that poster, and I went home and read Road and Track, and I saw all of these pictures of car races, and so I said, well, I've got to go to Elkhart Lake. And my friend Pat Donnelly, it turns out, had seen the same poster and come to the same conclusion. And so his dad drove us over here in 1962. So that was my first trip over here. And then I ended up, I don't know, you asked about Road and Track, how I ended up there. I worked for Cycle World magazine first. I was a car mechanic for 10 years and raced an H production Sprite. And then I wrote a story for Cycle World magazine, and they asked me to write a couple of other things, and they eventually hired me. And they were in California, in Newport Beach. And so Barb and I moved out there, and Road and Track was in the same building as Cycle World, and a lot of the Road and Track people and Cycle World people hung out together, and they realized I had a background with cars as well as motorcycles. I'd worked as a mechanic, and I'd raced a Sprite and a Formula Ford, and we lived there in California for 10 years. And then we moved back to Wisconsin after 10 years, mostly because I needed room to build a big garage and workshop, and real estate was high priced, and we wanted to get out of the traffic too. So, and Elkhart Lake is just, it's my home track, and it's my favorite track. And Barb and I were just walking around town last night, and I said, "Can you imagine Wisconsin without this place? I mean, it would, so much of the attraction would be gone."
We have a very large gathering of Spridgets this weekend with the 60th anniversary of the Austin Healey Sprite. So, and I know Sprites are kind of a favorite in your heart, too.
Yeah, I was talking at the dinner last night, and I said I kind of really got on the Sprite train while we were here at Elkhart Lake. I was watching the H production race, and they had huge H production fields in the early 70s. Right after I got back from Vietnam, Barb and I got married, and we came over here for the June Sprints, and there were probably 50 bug eyes out there. H production was Sprites with the occasional Fiat 850 or a couple of other cars, but I just got up in the middle of the H production race and went over and bought a driver's suit and from a trailer that was selling race equipment, and brought it back and showed it to Barb, and I said, "I'm not coming back here until I have a race car." And I had an old TR3 that I had restored, so I decided to sell it and buy a Bug Eye Sprite and go racing. And so I saw an ad in the paper for a Bug Eye in Madison, and I drove my TR3 over to look at it. And the guy fell in love with my TR3, and I fell in love with his Bug Eye. And that's what I wanted to race, because it looked like a real highly competitive, accessible, not too expensive race series, so in H production. And so I ended up with that. That was my first Sprite. And I ended up with a different... I restored that and sold it as a street car, because it was really, I discovered another car that would have made a better race car. It was all prepped and so on. So anyway, that was my first Bug Eye. Yeah.
Well, after lunch today, we're going to have a parade lap, and then we're going to have the Spridget feature race. Are you going to be in the parade lap?
Yes, I am. I'm supposed to lead the parade lap. I have a Sebring Sprite replica built by William Severn Thompson, who has kindly loaned it to me and Barb to have as a car for this weekend. And we did the lap on the old traditional road circuit yesterday with it. This car has a nice cam in it and big carbs, and it wants to go, so I think it'll be better to get it on the track.
So they're doing 1 lap.
I'm with Norb Breeze, and this is one of the interesting cars that features a Austin drivetrain, but it's made in Italy, called the Innocente Sprite. Give us some information on this car, Norb.
Well, this car was sold by BMC to Innocente, who was also part of the Lambretta scooter company. So they were together at one time, and they were sold in what they call knockdown form. A lot of there were cars from BMC sold with a prefix and the VIN number of KD, which was knockdown. So that's the agreement that they had, and they sold them to Innocente, and then they designed this really unique, sharp-looking body. There were only about 487 coupes built, but there were also a roadster version of this car, and I think they actually made more roadsters than coupes. This one is 1966, and it has the 1098 Sprite motor, drivetrain, suspension, brakes, all that's BMC. The whole floor pan. But you can see the gauges, the dash, all the rest of the styling are Italian. And this car was bought from the owner in Milan, Italy, still carries the plates from Milan, Italy. And the fellow who brought it over and had it restored, Bill Emerson, is a Sprite and Austin Healey expert. He's actually published a couple books.
original Elkhart Lake, around the lake type races. Kimberly Cup, the Sheldon Cup, and the Elkhart Lake Cup. They're based on, for us, in the vintage race community, they're based strictly on a time basis. You cannot rate out your race time by more than 1 second in the group that you're in, or you get disqualified. So it's a very competitive race because all the race times within the group session are very, very similar. The Kimberly Cup is the first cup, and actually it's named after Jim Kimberly, and it is I'll call it our slowest group, and it is, and the winner of the Kimberly Cup is Tim Detweiler and his Volvo. The Sheldon Cup is the second in between middle speed group. It was after Maynard Sheldon, who was one of the founders that helped put the original races together. And the winner of that Sheldon Cup is Gary Davis, and he has an 04 Dodge. It was an open class, and they had some very fast stuff, and actually John Fitch in Cunningham won in 51 and 52 with speeds around those rules of about 90 miles an hour, which if you've ever driven the course, you're going to find it really hard to believe. The winner of the Elkhart Lake Cup
by a couple of car lengths. I think top 5 will be Matt Holloway. So Roger, here is 5. Race group number. Still the Cup this afternoon. We'll have 5 and 5, 3/4 that relied on air and snow removal. start.